great. And the weather has also cooled down, so it is much better now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
greenery and all. Yes.
yes, that definitely helps. Hey, everyone, nice to have you live today, and thank you for joining us. I have an interesting session today to share with you, and yes, this is the problem statement which is bothering you, many of you. I know about page speed. That hey, how to improvise the page speed to get better rankings on Google search. So that's where we are. Uh, Perfect. Just some technical glitches. Sorry for that. So I have Swapnil along with me today. Whenever I am stuck with some page speed related queries, he's the go-to person to whom I step in and ask that, hey, Swapnil, how would you handle this particular challenge? And when many of you requested for a session on page speed, the technical aspects of it, I thought, who else other than Swapnil can handle this particular session, right? So Swapnil has been working with several organizations and helping them with this kind of challenges over the last many years. And I'll ask Swapnil himself to introduce himself to you all. Swapnil, with this, at least I would allow if you could introduce yourself to our audience today.
Yeah. So, hey guys, my name is Swapnil Parulekar. I am Mumbai based, currently founder of Epsilon Delta. It's a company which is focusing on site speed improvement and monitoring. We have founded this company about 7 years back. Before that, I was working as a director of site speed and performance in Quicker, and before that, close to 10 years in Yahoo as well. So for Yahoo, I was the performance architect, and I was kind of in charge of the strategy for improving the Yahoo site speed international as well as the core Yahoo properties. You guys know that Yahoo is probably the pioneer of the concept of site speed. It all started in 2006. I was lucky to be part of that team at the time. So yeah, the journey is good. Total 24 years experience now. Currently, we are working with a lot of Indian startups, e-commerce players, stock exchanges, finance companies, and all. And primarily, we are offering our performance consulting service as well as we have a tool called Gemini, which is a real user monitoring and improvement. So yes, we have worked with Infidigit, Kaushal, and his team for many companies, and we have seen real user examples of how SEO score improves and user engagement improves when you improve the site speed. So I'm very happy to talk about that. Yeah, yeah, over to you, Kaushal.
Thank you, Swapnil. Hello everyone once again. And what I would like to present first to you is one of the case study where at least uh, we saw real good rankings and improvements in sessions and clicks based on the implementation. So let me just, before I hand over it to Swapnil and we take this discussion forward, I would love to share that particular case study with all of you. Fortunately, the uh, owners of this particular website have readily agreed to share this particular case study with all of you. So just let me share it with all of you. Perfect. This is a brand called Pisato, and Pisato had this one particular challenge about optimizing their page speed. So what we did is we helped them overcome this particular challenge with the technical solution, and the Infidigit team did code minification, optimization, and several other things which we are going to learn in much deeper manner during this next hour. So I'll not get into the details, but yes, let's look at the outcome of that particular thing. Now I'm sharing the GT metrics report. Again, we may go into this particular tool also in some time, so I'm not detailing it across, but yes, uh, I'll just read out the numbers over here that, okay, what was graded as a performance of E moved to a performance of A, and this was followed by improvement in rankings and other metrics, right? Other KPIs which the SEOs love to improve. So this is a little about this particular case study. Would not take much of the time over here because what we need to understand is, hey, how do we do this, right? And that's what is the more critical element. So without further ado, Swapnil, over to you. We would love to understand that hey, this is done, and SEOs keep on requesting the engineering team that hey, help me improve my page speed. But yes, how should it be done? We would love to hear that from you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sharing my presentation now. Just let me know when it is visible.
Yes, Swapnil, sure.
Okay, I hope is it visible now.
Yes, it's visible and now it's in full screen. Thank you, Swapnil.
Great. So, I mean, we are here to discuss about, I mean, how do you improve your website speed, page speed to drive the SEO growth, right? Uh, Again, a brief background. I mean, I just explained about this. I'm the founder at Epsilon Delta, ex Yahoo, ex Quicker. This is my contact information, ex Publicer on LinkedIn, or you can subscribe to Epsilon Delta LinkedIn page, and our website is also visible. So before we begin, right, I mean, let's talk about why site speed or performance, right? I mean, a very simple solution or answer is let the users be delighted, right? I mean, when the user is delighted, he or she is going to do more purchase, maybe more engagement and all, and maybe he is compelled to move into the next pages, right? So why frustrate them? Happy customers, better revenue, better reputation, and all. So it's a very simple fundamental, right? Let's move to the next one. Now, all of you know this particular building, right? This is the world's tallest building as of now, Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Are you aware of the fact that this building also has the one of the fastest elevators to take you at the top floor? I think 164th or something. So there, I mean, when I went there, I mean, there are a lot of people, I mean, standing in the queue. They have taken a ticket of maybe 100 dirham or something to go on the top. Now imagine instead of a fastest lift coming from the ground floor to the top, you ask them to climb 10 floors and then they say, okay, we have the fastest lift at the top, which will take you at the top. Will that work? Basically it will not, right? I mean, because the people who will be aware of this particular, like, okay, I have to climb 10 floors, they will probably straight away say, no, 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 I don't want to climb 10 floors. People who are not aware of 10th floor, they will probably climb because they have purchased it, the ticket. But on the top, then again after 10th floor, they will say, oh, I'm very tired, I'm probably not interested. Or even if they go up, they will probably think over like, oh, what was my previous experience of climbing 10 floors and all, right? So there is a reputation issue and there is a high bounce, right? I mean, both of these terms you guys are kind of familiar. That same thing happens on the website, right? I mean, when a same person lands on the website, that is the initial barrier, right? If the first page, the first experience is the slowest experience, then most users will not go ahead in the next page. That is the bounce. And even if it happens, like they go further, they will keep on talking about their slowest experience, actually multiplied by the experience to their friends and families. So reputation impact is actually manifold. And that is how the website site speed, traffic, I mean, this is all related, right? The traffic engagement goes down. So third use case is you're already aware of it, right? I mean, you guys are from the SEO field. You know that Google announced in 2019 that site speed and Google search ranking are now related, and they specifically talked about these core web vitals. By the way, definitions of core web vitals have changed in between over the years. Current definition is these three metrics: LCP, INP, and CLS. But it's very simple. I mean, if Google is happy, which means your ranking is better, so you get more and more customers. And how Google knows that the I have to rank it higher? One of the signals is they will look at the page speed based on the core web vitals, and that is how this is related. Okay. Third and most important stuff is you have a marketing budget, right? I mean, I call this is a revenue leakage, right? So there are companies who are spending thousands of dollars doing some marketing. So what is marketing is you basically attract or you try to get paid traffic on your website and then hope that the users will go ahead, do some engagement, do some shopping and all, and that is how your revenue will boost. They will have a habit of that engagement and they will keep on coming again and again, right? Now, what happens when the first experience or subsequent experiences are slow? This is where the high bounce will come into picture. Now, do not satisfy yourself with 40 or 50%. Again, this is the lower level I'm talking about. I have seen companies with 70% bounce rate and all. So which means what, if you're spending $1,000 to get 100 users or 1,000 users, basically $700 or 700 users are not going ahead beyond your first page. So which is basically a loss, right? I mean, you are wasting your marketing budget, and that is why I call it a revenue leakage. So it is directly related. Now that we have understood what is site speed, right? I mean, how it is related to users and all, let's talk about what is site speed, right? I mean, as I mentioned, it is not a single number anymore. Why? Because not just because Google is saying it is not a single number anymore. There are many other parameters. So from Google's point of view, SEO point of view, there are three factors which are affected, right? One is called largest content footprint. This is the LCP. The next one is a cumulative layoff shift. This is CLS. And the third one is an interaction to next page. This is INP. Just 2 months back, this new metric has come up, INP. Before that, there was a called FID, first input delay. So anyway, this definition. In addition to this, from my experience side, I want to add one more important metric into overall tracking. This is called first contentful page. Again, this is a Google concept only, but for some reason, it is not part of the core web. Okay. So why three different metrics? I mean, let's look at this, right? I mean, I have an LCP which represents the loading, right? Which represents the loading. The second one is basically page movement, which is happening in bit during the pages. And if the page is not stabilized, a normal user is not going to understand that, okay, he is ready to interact. Hence, page movement is important. And the third one is interactivity. Like when the page is stabilized and when the user is ready to interact, how fast your website or your browser main thread is responding to the user. So three metrics, right? LCP, CLS, and IMP. Google is defining this as an overall game for the page experience. If you improve these three metrics, then these are the signals which are taken for as a, to the search ranking, and they will improve it. Okay, I hope this is clear so far, right? Now visually I want to basically explain how this is happening, right? I mean, let's talk about the FCP, first contentful page. I also call this as a hello response, right? I mean, visually I'm just going to show a video where a page will be loaded, and even though the page is loaded, the screen remains the blank, and only after some time a loader will come into the picture, signifying to the user that okay, page is getting responded, and after that then the actual page will come into the picture. Now mind you, these are all old experiences which we have captured about 1 or 2 years back. All of these pages have highly improved performance right now. So let's see about the FCP. Okay, so now I have hit the URL load, the timer is moving, but the screen has remained blank. So which means the HTML has come, the JavaScript, CSS has come, but nothing is painted on the screen. And then after some time, see, the loader has come now, right? The loader has come, and after that the actual content is going to come, right? So even though this is a little bit delayed experience, so in the same, this was done on a 3G fast, but this is how the paint sequence was for this particular website. So I want to highlight few things here. I mean, for about 9 or 10 seconds the screen was blank. Now imagine if my parents go on a website and they try to access this particular product, and they see only a white screen, right? Even though the server has responded, the JavaScript, CSS is loading in the browser, but then nothing is painted on the screen, right? And they feel that the site is not responding and they will just bounce off. Now, in such kind of bounce, basically the analytics will even not capture that a such and such user has bounced off. Analytics will work only when the page has completely loaded. Then only Google Analytics or any other system will capture that okay, the user has loaded and now it has not moved into the next page, hence bounce. So when you see 30, 40, 50% bounce, in reality your bounce is actually much higher, right? So this is what I want to highlight, why first contentful paint is important, because it directly affects to your bounce. Let's see about the CLS. CLS is a movement, right? I mean, this was again another big basket site was there earlier, and you can see in the page how the page movements are happening. The the skeleton is coming up, then the thing is coming from top to bottom and all, right? Those movements, what you see, I mean, not the scroll which is happening here in the carousel, but from top to bottom, some sections are moving, what we call is a div. Now, that is called a CLS. Excuse me about that. I'm just having a little bit sore throat as well. Let's look at the LCP now, right? I mean, you have understood the FCP, we have understood the CLS. Now let's look at the LCP as well. Now, this company, again, the old example, has managed to get the first content out. You can see the screen, you can see the logo, you see the blue color and all, but it is not painting you the main content which is coming into the screen, right? I mean, what is this page about? That is not coming into it. This particular case will be captured through the LCP, right? The middle section is the largest contentful paint, and hence that will be captured as LCP, right? So now you have understood that for users, FCP is important, LCP is important, and CLS is important, right? But from Google point of view, there is a INP, which is an interaction based metrics, that is also important. Okay, so let's move into the next thing, like how do you measure now the site speed? Now, how do you measure is, again, Kaushal mentioned about GT metrics and all. It is a paid tool, but it has a free version as well. But let me talk about what Google is offering, right? What Google is offering. So first and foremost, I want you to understand that do not use Google Analytics for your page speed, right? Fortunately, if I am correct, I think GA4 onwards, Google is not tracking this average page speed directly in the GA4. But earlier it used to, and then many agencies used to get confused about, okay, performance is this, which is shown in the Google Analytics, and then a lot of confusion it used to create. uh, Very basic stuff I want to call out. GA never had core web vitals, which Google was tracking. It had onload time, which we called is a load time of the page. Now remember, in a language we say load time, but in Google's language it is core web vital, which is LCP, CLS, INP. So that two used to get mixed. And as you can see in GA, there used to be average page load time. It was actually a onload marker on the page. That loading they used to show. So if you are still referring to this or any other tool giving you average page load time based on onload marker, please discard. Don't look into that. Now from Google side, there are three more tools, like which you are probably aware of. I'm sure you are aware of. You are from the SEO industry, right? The first one is Lighthouse, which many of the developers are using, right? Lighthouse is kind of a tool. Now it is coming as an integrated into the Chrome browser as well. If you open Chrome Dev Tool, you will see the Lighthouse integration, and there you can run some test. Now, being you are able to run the test, which means it is a synthetic test. Synthetic means you are running it for a specific condition, your browser, your speed, and your viewport version, mobile versus desktop, and that particular URL, and blah blah blah, right? It is best used when you want to debug the performance, right? But you should never use Lighthouse for classifying the performance of a particular website or particular page or particular experience. It is only to be used for debugging. Now, good point is it will also tell you the best practices and all, but between you and me, these best practices are very, very generic in nature. And if you keep on fixing them, you will not see performance improvement in majority of the cases. We will talk about that later, right? The second section is the page speed. Now, this is widely used tool right now. And page speed also has two sections. The first section is the real user data, or what we call is the field data, right? The second section is the Lighthouse again, which is the lab data, and that is where the famous score comes into picture, right? Most of you are tracking about the score and all, but remember the second section is the Lighthouse. So lab data, particular URL, particular experience, particular browser, particular location. In this case, page speed location is USA, not India, and particular speed as well, 3G fast speed on a particular mobile, Moto G Power Mobile. So way too many controlling parameters to define, and hence when you run page speed, majority of the times the score keep on changing even though you are not change any experience, right? Google itself says in the PageSpeed documentation, right, you have to run multiple times in order to just generalize a score, otherwise don't look into the score. Okay, but what you should look in PageSpeed is the real user data, the top level field data, right? And the next one is a search console, which you are already aware of it. Like it now it tracks real user data. When you see Core Web Vital in the search console, you will have real user data. But when only when you have lot of samples to capture. So there are also limitations. We'll talk about that in the next slide. But it is a good example, like where if you want to see how Google is showing the Core Web Vitals, then either use PageSpeed field data or either use the search console. Now, as I mentioned, Lighthouse, it has two sections. The first section is the field data. What you see in the image is these 6 parameters, out of which the first 3 are core web vitals. And in this case, this is quite rare. Core web vital assessment is passed for the field data, right? Which means in field, you already have good performance as per Google standard. But then see the bottom section, right? Diagnose performance issues. This is the lab data of Lighthouse. It says the score is 48, right? I mean, does it make sense? Like Google is seeing everything green, says past and everything, but the Lighthouse also from Google is now talking about my score is only 48. Just in a very short term, I will explain why this difference is coming up, because a real user experience and a synthetic experience are vast difference. One of the key things is the cookie law notices which are coming on every user, right? You have seen it, right? This comes to the user only for the first time and not subsequent time. So in this page speed, every time this cookie law will come into the picture. I think in this image also you can see that okay, cookie law notice is coming into the picture. Second thing, page speed runs without any cache, right? So no cache environment, and then US and all. So because of that, you will always see the numbers. What you should refer into the top section, which is the green sections, right? I mean, these users should be very happy, these property owners, that their performance is green and hence their SEO ranking should be good. Now, opportunity section, which is the basically recommendations about improve this and that. So that is very generic, right? I mean, some of these recommendations will just say, don't look into, I mean, the use basically, I mean, there is unused JS and CSS and all. Now, guys, let's just understand when a developer is developing a site, right? He is not adding any extra code based on his will, right? There is a code written for various sections, and only on that page load, not every code is getting executed. It's only executed when you do some action, or even like the JavaScript or CSS files are common. So what happens is on a home page you will not see a code of maybe a listing page or maybe a product page executed, but Lighthouse opportunities will tell you that this is an unused code or not used code and something, and will ask you to shred the code. But that is not correct, right? I mean, I'm just giving one example like why I don't find it very useful to improve the performance. The next one is the page speed field data. Now we spoke about page speed field data, but is it really reliable? I mean, if you don't have anything, yes, do rely on this. But this is the data reported only from the Chrome browser. Okay, only Chrome browser being the Google system. So Chrome, Chromium engine, or no. Okay. Secondly, no data for low traffic URL. So if you have no traffic, you will not get your data for these URLs. So Google will not report you. Same thing for Search Console. If your URL is not indexed, it will not show you the data for that URL in the Search Console. And then most important, it is 28 days delayed. So it is a rolling average of 28 days across various samples. So it is not possible to capture the real user sample, I mean the real time performance of this particular experience, right? I mean, what is the experience at this moment? No, Google will not tell you. Google will always give you last 28 days rolling average, right? So today if you make a release of performance optimization, this number will not change, but some other tools, real user tools which are showing you real time data, they will have an improvement. So Search Console as well, as I mentioned, it's only index URLs which are tracked, only high traffic URLs which are tracked, and no URL grouping to make it useful. Now, how many times you have seen specifically on an e-commerce site, there are millions of product URLs which are appearing as slow URLs, right? But will that be an individual URL? Yes, Google is thinking it as an individual URL. And if you don't have significant traffic on that individual URL, Google will probably not also capture traffic for those URLs. But technically, from developer point of view, it is the same template. It is the same product page on the e-commerce site, which is serving the content. So the code is same, the template is same. So naturally, they should be grouped together. That is not happening in the search console. So that is another area which you guys need to look. Like when you see the URLs, whether you are able to manually group the URLs or not based on the page templates. So as I said, like, see, the solution will be to use any real user measurement tool, right? Technically, any good tool which is able to do real-time tracking, grouping, able to differentiate between various platforms, mobile, desktop, and all, raise alerts or anything, you could use that. Now, we being the founder of Epsilon Data, we have a tool called Gemini, which our customers are using for last 7 years, and they are finding useful. But there are many such tools available in the world, and then you can use any of them based on the your need. So now we have spoken about what is site speed and all. So how do we fix that, right? uh, See, you being SEO guys, you are always tasked to grow the site, right? Get additional traffic, get external traffic, and organic traffic, and that is how basically when the traffic grows, engagement grows, revenue grows, and everyone is happy, right? Site speed is all about retaining those users, right? Remember, I mentioned about the first one. First experience is the biggest hurdle for any digital journey. If you make it fast, then the user will go ahead. So site speed is all about retaining users. Easiest solution is to basically paint your page faster. Do not keep the paint white, page white for a long time. You have to keep the paint experience faster and faster and faster. And that is what is Google is talking about, right? Google is all the metrics, FCP, LCP, those speed index. Again, this is another metrics which Google has used in the past. These are all about paint sequence based metrics, right? Now, how do I fix in a very high category? I mean, how do I fix the performance? So I am gonna speak 4 5 high level principles, right? I'm not going to talk about a very generic stuff, in the sense, okay, you fix the caching stuff, okay, you do minification and all. No, I'm talking about from the principal point of view, how do we go about improving the performance site speed, right? So remember, I mean, those people who are non-technical, right? I mean, how a website works, when you make a request, say http dot slash epsilon delta dot co, the request goes to the server and server is going to serve a page. What is a page? A page is an HTML. First, this resource which is received is HTML, and then HTML inside loads the CSS, JS fonts, and if there are any APIs needed, then the JS is going to call the APIs and get the further data JSON. So that is the whole structure, right? Now, by default, HTML rendering is blocked on JavaScript, CSS, sometimes fonts as well. And so, unless these resources are downloaded, HTML is not going to paint on the screen. And this is the reason why you have seen that white screen, even though we are loading the site, there was a white screen on the your screen, right? Now, if when your HTML is coming first, how about you enable HTML to paint standalone without any dependency? Then your performance will naturally be faster, right? You don't have to wait for your JavaScript, CSS, or fonts to download. You are basically painting faster. See, it helps the SEO guys as well. I mean, on SEO side, if there is, I think there is one option in the setting which shows that what is the average time to load or something. So that is the time what bot is facing. Google bot is facing for the page to load, the bot for the bot to render the page. Now, when the page is pending only with HTML, then Google need not execute all JavaScript and CSS files. And yes, Googlebot nowadays execute JavaScript as well. Earlier, it was not. So, which means you are allowing Google to render in the first pass, right? Isn't it better, right? I mean, Google is not facing any issues in that case for the bot. So paint maximum with HTML. Now, second thing, now you have said that, okay, I will not have dependency like CSS, JS or anything. So I am going to paint standalone. But will the page standalone? Yeah, maybe not, right? Because there is a structure, there is a top level search box, there is a carousel, there are some images coming up. Maybe on the cricket side, there is a score coming up and all, right? So you need a CSS to ensure that the page is rendered correctly. So that CSS you are generally adding as an external file. But now you can use a critical CSS. This concept is what? Basically, it is the CSS which is needed to paint your above the fold area. Above this fold area means in the screen, whatever you see, whatever CSS is needed to paint that area, this is called critical CSS. So there is a process through which you can automate extracting the critical CSS one time and then add it inside HTML as an inline. Then the HTML will paint when you remove the dependency. Okay, so these are the two things which you need to do. Allow HTML to paint standalone without dependency and use critical CSS in the HTML to paint it standalone in the correct way. If you don't do that, what happens is like this, right? I mean, in this case, on the left side, there is no CSS, no CSS, no critical CSS. And then on the right side, when the CSS is available, that's when the page loads completely, right? I hope this is visible right now on your screen. But as you can see on the left side, even though the structure is available now, like I can see the menu, right? I can click home, world, US news and all. But then this is not the correct experience which you want to show. The correct experience is visible on the right side, which you can achieve by adding the critical CSS in the HTML itself, right? So this is why critical CSS is important. Now, another thing is basically you have to maximize your paint experience within the HTML. When your HTML comes up, either you can paint only header, or you can paint only footer, or you can paint maximum within the HTML itself. Now, I can understand that not everything is possible in HTML, but let's try to paint maximum in the HTML. In my basically suggestion, when I say maximum, which means try to get the LCP element into the HTML, right? Unless you have that structure in the HTML, the LCP will not paint. Now, like in this case, right? I mean, you have seen on the left side, I mean, these guys painted their experience early on the header side and all, but their main content was not painted. The LCP was not painted. Whereas on the right side, they have painted everything together and hence their experience appears faster, right? So their main content is, I think, that coconut. So they are able to paint this coconut as early as possible through the HTML or maybe the next resource as image, and hence they are faster. Sorry about that. So how do you make this happen? So as I said, you have to have a structure within the HTML, right? Unless you have a structure, no matter whether you load your image in the HTML or not, it is not going to paint. So you have to have the structure in the HTML. Next, you have to identify which image is coming as an LCP. I'm assuming here that your image is coming as a largest contentful page. It is perfectly possible that a text will come as an LCP element. In that case, no question of image and all. If a text comes, which means it is the HTML which is painting as an LCP. So again, the same principle, like make HTML fastest, maximum painting and everything. But if you have an image as an LCP, then ensure that you add a preload tag to the HTML in the image. Now there are various kind of preload definitions here available. Like a pre-connect is basically a connecting the domain. A pre-DNS, I mean, there's a DNS prefetch is basically you just do a DNS of that domain. Preload is actually loading the resource from that particular, I mean, this particular resource, you can basically load it early. I would say priority will be highest in that page. And recently, I think Chrome 103 onwards and all, they have also launched called early heads. These are type of headers which basically with the HTML itself, the header will come. So the browser need not wait for the HTML to download. Looking at the header itself, it will start preloading the resource, right? I mean, these are the new technologies which are coming into the performance world and all. Hence, it is very important that you guys need to be aware of. I mean, you means only the developer community probably needs to be aware of this. But yeah, so and then the some people also do this mistake, right? I mean, they will try to load the JavaScript. Through JavaScript, an API call will be made. Then through API, you get the image tag, and then that image tag is painted. Now, this delayed sequence you can never optimize LCP. So LCP, it is better that you identify at the server level and then preload in the HTML, right? So these are the top principles which I spoke about, right? I mean, paint maximum with HTML, then I will add critical CSS, and then I will, for the LCP element, I will paint the maximum, and I will ensure that if the LCP is an image, then of course I will preload the image. Assuming these things are done, then another thing which you need to do is a CLS fix. If there is a movement happening in the page, right, it is generally a malfunction. I'm seriously calling this as a malfunction. It's a malfunction of your CSS. The CSS is not properly defined, or if there are images coming up, then there is a minimum height is not specified, the placeholders are not specified, and hence the page movements are happening. Now, these things can be fixed by the developer separately, but you guys can just identify, okay, there is a movement happening, and some of these tools like GT metrics, or we generally use web test freeware version as well to capture this number. So having understood now all of this, let's solve about some confusion which I've seen in the industry, right? Will having loader help the user experience? Now, many of you have seen loader in the experience and all. And if you go to the design folks or product folks, they will talk about, oh, I'm showing the loader, which means the page is printing early. And yes, Google will also sometimes make a mistake and capture loader as the LCP element. But is that helping the user actually? It's not, right? I mean, why you're doing this site speed improvement and all? Of course, for your use case is improving the core web vitals, hence improve the ranking. But then there will be no engagement because user is not waiting for the loader, right? User wants to see content as early as possible, right? So engagement will be more, the bounce will be, I mean, engagement will be less, the bounce will be more and all. So it doesn't help, right? I mean, if you have a loader, which means there is some sequence which is blocking, hence the page remains white, and hence you have added the loader. So why not remove the dependency, right? Why not make the page paint with HTML as early as possible and improve the FCP? If that happens, then you don't need a loader. We have done this for many clients actually, and this is possible, right? The second one, and this is the most talk about, I think I would say about across my experience, I mean, lazy loading of images. See, lazy loading of image used to be the best practice about 10 years back, right? I mean, when the HTML is loading, when the page is loading, lazy load the images and all. But you know what, guys? Images will never block the page structure. Images will never block the page structure. They are just probably blocking the bandwidth of the user. So they are, if you do the lazy loading of all the images, then even your above the fold images will also get lazy loaded, right? So what happens is your structure will come, but the main content, the carousel, the ad will not come into picture. Imagine you see a cricket stuff and suddenly the image of Virat Kohli is not appearing in the screen, right? On an article. Will that help? It is not, right? I mean, so above the fold area, images needs to be preloaded, right? I'm saying not just LCP, but other images. If there are not too many images, maybe 4 5 images, you should do preload for all, right? Then it will paint early. Below the fold images, maybe you can deprioritize and lazy load it if you have certain critical resources which are loading below the fold. Otherwise, with this strategy, your HTML is doing maximum painting, 90-95% of the painting. Then what happens after HTML, like your CSS, JS is loading, where your image is lazy loading or not, it doesn't matter. So the best performance optimization will be when the HTML is able to do maximum painting and improves the FCP, LCP, CLS, and speed index. Right? Then what remains is only the interaction, which we can resolve. Now, the next question, which many guys ask us, is will fixing LCB only help? Right? So, no, from Google's point of view, no. Google has clearly mentioned that if you improve all the three core web vitals, then only it is considered as passed, and hence your ranking will improve. But in real life, what happens is when you have an your site versus your competitor site as well, competitor is also having issues, right? Their performance is also bad. So let's say out of three parameters, if you improve two parameters, you still become faster than your competitors, and probably it will give you some gain. But technically, if you fix all the three parameters, then nobody is going to touch you, at least from the speed point of view. Speed. So that aspect is covered. So ensure that you fix all of it. Now, from the user experience point of view, as I mentioned, also improve the first contentful paint (FCP) and a speed index. Speed index is an average time to paint your screen, which basically considers all the painting on the screen, right? So fix that, and of course the CLS fixes, which are generally very easy. You have to fix in the CSS or add image placeholders and an HTML level fixes. It doesn't require complex technological changes, right? Then this is the latest one which we have seen. I mean, I've seen this, I've heard this question from two, three companies. Is on the search console, if you go to the settings on the left side, you see average response time, the first graph. Let it load on your screen and then maybe I will explain. Yeah, here it comes. So average response time in the search console, right? Where you also see crawl request, how many crawlers are coming up, total download size, which is in bytes, but the last one is the average response time. Now this is the aggregate response for Google bot to fetch the HTML. So HTML response time for this particular website for Googlebot is this. This is not the same experience which a user is going to see. Core Web Vitals is basically reported from every user loading the website on Chrome or Chromium browser, provided that the website has a high traffic and all this blah blah blah. But it is the user side. Many companies will have two different servings, one for bot and one for user. Why? Because user may be getting a client side render page, whereas for bot they will serve a fully server render page HTML and serve it to the bot, right? Of course, both of them will look structurally same, but bot is looking into that time and core web vital is captured from the user. So for Google to improve your ranking, Google has to look into core web vitals of the users only and not this data. So even if this data goes into 4 seconds or something, your bot failure will increase, right? Bot will see 5xx errors like server not responding or something, but it is not going to affect core web vital per se. You will see another errors like okay, Google will probably report that 5xx errors are coming up on the search console. Okay, so this clears the very very basic confusion. Now coming to the main thing, I mean, does this site speed improvement really help SEO? Now, as Kaushal mentioned, I'm also sharing one of our study. Now, this is our first top level screen is from our Gemini tool, real user tool. And as you can see here, we have improved the first contentful paint because we find it very useful. We have also improved the LCP, we have improved the simulative layout shift, and at that time, the first input delay was also there. And when we improve all of this, you can see below that the impressions and the CTR in the search console actually jumped, right? So more people were clicking through the search, more people were being served the company's site through search and all. So naturally, there was an improvement in SEO. So there was a more traffic on the site because the site was already faster, delightful. It turned into a better revenue and all. So it was a win-win situation for all, right? Just because doing this activity, if this you can do it, I mean, this doesn't require any money to be spent, right? It is the SEO's job to ensure that you have a good performance. It is the developer's job to ensure that you have a better performance or the best performance, right? So that covers my basic PPT or tutorial. So yeah, Kaushal, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Swapnil. Thanks a lot for sharing such kind of insightful information. I believe this is going to help a lot, many number of people solve their SEO challenges and even the page speed challenges. So, Swapnil, while we wait for the audience to share their questions, at least I have few, and at least I'm going to put some of the questions first.
Hmm.
So one thing, at least, I love the way you explained page speed in terms of getting on a Burj Khalifa. So
Yeah.
that was really a nice way of explaining that. But on the leaky bucket
Huh.
thing, right? You mentioned about the leaky bucket where marketers are investing so many millions of dollars, and then they have the bouncing user challenge,
Correct.
right? And me and my team definitely, whenever we go through it, and in fact, not only us but all the SEOs around the globe do that particular thing, that okay, we go and tell the marketers that, hey, please take care of the page speed.
Page speed.
But the biggest challenge which a marketer faces today is they have to prioritize. They have to prioritize the effort and understand which thing to prioritize first, which one to prioritize later. Because yes, engineering resources are really
Limited resources.
difficult to find, yeah, within an organization sometimes. So with such a thing, at least just want to understand that, hey, how much time does it really take? Let's say if my page scores are the worst,
Huh.
right? Uh, Maybe everything is in the red zone, or when you're on the orange zone as well. So everything in terms of page speed is in the red zone, or when you're on the GT matrix, you're on that grade of E. From there, if I have to move to the green zone or to the grade of A, how much time does it really take for an engineer to solve this kind of challenges, as per you?
Right. So it is actually a good question, and it is a problem across the whole industry as well. See, traditionally, if you look at the tools like GT Metrics or even the page speed, right? I mean, they have given n number of recommendations. I mean, once we had captured how many standard recommendations can come, and they are actually like 50 plus recommendations. And some tools will tell you 50 plus recommendations to fix the performance. Now the challenge is, yes, I mean, resources are limited, the budget is limited, and the time is limited, right? So we within Epsilon Delta follow a concept of 80-20. So
Okay.
we fix for 80% of the gain by fixing only 20% of the issues. We don't fix all, and I would strongly suggest you don't fix all. Now the risk is you are going to see a little bit score degradation. Again, score, I'm talking about score. But if
Yeah.
you look at the real numbers, CLS, LCP, and IFP, if you see improvement there, then forget about the score, because score is a summation of TBT, speed index, and all, which Google and users are not bothered about mostly, right? So that is what we follow. So in that case, maybe within 1 month as well, depending on how complex it is. And yes, don't suggest like you change complete technologies or upgrade your stack or add something XYZ and all. Again, that is beyond the budget. But easy fixes are always possible, and those are possible between 1 to 3 months part time. I'm talking about part time. If you're full time, within 1 month you can improve the score.
Perfect. 1 month, that's the time which Swapnil says. Yes, in some of the studies, which at least, or some of the cases which we have solved, it has taken much lesser. But yes, 1 month is the time which can help you save, if not, let's say, millions of dollars, at least $500,000 with
Correct.
a bounce rate of, let's say, if you're operating on a bounce rate of 40, 50 or something, that definitely saves you 500,000, if nothing
Yeah.
less.
See,
But
the
yes,
1 month which I mentioned, right, it also considers the automation of the performance fix. Because once
okay,
you fix it, within 1 month, you're going to break it, right?
true.
So you have to automate it, right? Because otherwise it will break for the next version.
Perfect. And yeah, we have some questions flowing in from the audience. We have one question from Faizan. Faizan is asking that, hey, does this work with WordPress and Shopify? So Faizan, I believe you're asking about the tool which Swapnil mentioned. Swapnil, yes, so that at least I'll allow you to answer that question.
Yes.
Does your tool which you have developed work on WordPress and Shopify?
Yeah, the tool Gemini actually works on all technologies. So it is a plug and play. You just add the JavaScript into the site, and it will intelligently basically identify all the URLs, get it, do, and it's a pretty good analysis which will provide it.
Mhm.
And technically, you guys just understand that performance optimization, what I spoke about, the principles and all. I'm talking about the browser level understanding, right? I mean, how browser is going to render the website. So that is all you are going to fix. So if your tool is going to capture that paint sequence, then it is the best tool which you should work. So yeah, Gemini captures that, and there are other tools as well which we could.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Swapnil, and I hope some of the users get onto Gemini uh, and at least
Yeah, we do
improvise this.
offer free trial, by the way.
Perfect. That's good, Swapnil. Uh, okay, Venkat has one question, and I'm going to share that. Why there will be a huge difference of LCP metrics in mobile and desktop? The same thing goes with FCP as well.
Ah,
So, what would be the reasoning which we can share with Venkat over there? Why there is a huge difference on the mobile and the desktop version?
correct. So there are two, three criteria or two, three issues which happened in this case. The easier issue is some of the websites they are not serving mobile specific images for LCP. I mean, they will still serve a 100 KB image which is coming on a desktop as a mobile LCP as well, even though the viewport is smaller. So what you are doing is you are basically asking browser to download same 100 KB data, then resize and then render it on your screen, right? So why not download a smaller size image itself and show it on the mobile? Now people who are doing this mistake, their LCP number will be degraded. Second, the most important concept is everybody talks about bandwidth, right? I mean, India is talking about 5G rollout. I mean, world is already talking about 5G, maybe 6G and all. What we are talking about is bandwidth. We are missing about the latency problem. A latency is the distance between 2 points from a server and a user. So, for example, I mean, if I ask somebody to deliver me a packet from, say, because I'm in Mumbai, so maybe from Thane, which is the next town, it will come faster, right? But if I ask somebody to deliver me a packet from, say, Srinagar, which is the far top north side town, then it is going to take 4 days, right? Even though the packet is same, maybe the truck which is carrying is also very big, but the traveling distance is more. That is latency, right? I mean, between server and user, if the distance is more, no matter how big your bandwidth is, it is going to take some time. Unfortunately, in India, what Gemini has seen 600 millisecond latency between a user and the server on mobile. So, which means the round trip is 1200 millisecond. You add DNS, connect, SSL, 1500 milliseconds before your first byte comes on the browser. Then the content download time and all. So that is how it gets delayed, right? I mean, yeah. More than bandwidth, the latency is also important. Another key points to remember.
Perfect. Thanks, Swapnil, for that. Venkat, I hope that answers your question. And Swapnil, just on the side note, Venkat was the first person who is a part of my growth school community, and he requested this particular session.
Oh,
So
great.
that at least he was the one who said that, hey, Kaushal, help me with the page speed challenges. This is something which is kind of, I need to get technical. And I was something where, at least being an SEO, I said, okay, I need to get somebody who is Swapnil, to get this kind of things answered. But thanks for answering that. That really helps. And I like the analogy between the trucks and the other stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks. Loved the example. Swapnil, we have one other question which I would like to pick up. This question is from Sunil.
Huh.
This is very specific to Gemini. Uh, and Swapnil is asking that, hey, when you're speaking about automation,
Yeah.
do you mean that we get this speed optimization changes done once, uh, suggested even if we make any changes to the Shopify theme later on, let's say,
Hmm.
seems he's using Shopify, that okay, so in future the speed will never come down?
Okay. Okay. Yes. So, what is, sorry about that. Sorry. So, in, see, I've seen this so many times in my career that people fix performance problem. They celebrate that we have achieved. In the next release, everything is degraded, right? I mean, because
So
even though the developers are known to fix everything, but somehow the whole release, people, I mean, they're scrambling to push features and all, and then it is not working, and then it again degrades. If you don't have a real-time measurement available, then it's only after 2 months you will come to know that the performance has degraded. Automation is basically, I'm talking about automating some of the recommendations so that they don't go as a broken issues into the life site. For example, when I say your HTML must have critical CSS, some people may do it as a manual process. We can do as an automated process. Like before you make a release, you can do critical CSS and add it in the HTML as an automated way. Before you make a release, you can do JS and CSS as non-blocking resources and push them live. So these changes, right? These changes could be automated to some extent. And yes, this is possible on Shopify as well or WordPress as well.
Sorry, I was
You're
on.
on mute.
Yeah, thanks at least for sharing that, Swapnil. Again, Faizan has a comment over there regarding his previous question that hey, WordPress and Shopify make this issues a lot, and many of these are unsolvable. What do you suggest for that? Definitely, one thing is which you suggested is Gemini, but other than that, are there any other alternatives, Swapnil, which you would have for the people?
People have developed some plugins, I think, Shopify plugins and all, uh, and WordPress plugins as well. Uh, we may suggest some plugins maybe offline later on, which we
Okay.
are aware of, like
Mhm.
which may optimize or which may automate some of these critical CS. I'm sure. I
Okay.
mean, there are. I know. I'm aware of some plugins.
Mhm.
Uh, but then I also want to call out that some plugins are basically fooling the customers as well. So
Okay.
recently, I mean, in fact, Shopify published one article about it as well,
Mhm.
that they just basically block some of the resources to pass into the Google page speed. And
Mhm.
this way, they will show that the score is 90 plus and will declare that the performance is good and all, and they will charge the customers. So this is my sincere request that please avoid such kind of plugins and all. Uh, Performance fixing is an art, and you have to put your hard work intelligently. I'm not saying a lot of time to fix it, but once you fix it, your user will be delighted and everything will happen. So don't basically fool your own customer by using those plugins which are just going to fool the tools rather than users.
Thanks again for that. We have more questions coming in, and this is one question coming on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Uh, so Payal is asking, um, are these fixes always long term? Uh, and engineering team has to put always the extra bandwidth to solve this. At least, yeah, it's very similar to the question which came in earlier from the other participant. But yes, any additional comments on that, Swapnil?
Uh, yes, fixes are long term as long as you don't break them. No, seriously. So, as I mentioned about 80/20 rule, right? I mean, the architect of the company or whoever is a consultant like us, it's their job to identify, okay, these are my top 4 or 5 fixes which I will execute and
Mhm.
I will maintain by automating it. If you manage that, then I have many customers who for 4 5 years they have improved the performance and then they have managed to maintain it. It also goes into the blood of the developers as well, right? I mean, as you're focusing on fixing the bugs, right? Without fixing the bug, without testing, you don't make a product live. The same way, it is just that without ensuring that your waterfall is not dependent on any JS, CSS, it is printing correctly, and I have all metrics in kind of good. Then only the QA certifies and it goes into live. So that is a process as well you have to put in your company. Then once you put it, it stays long term, very long term.
Okay, fair.
And if you miss it, then a tool like Gemini will basically tell you, oh, your performance has degraded after this release. Now capture it.
Okay, perfect. Fair. And there is one other question which is coming in from Akshay. Akshay is asking, there are new image formats coming in, and as the technology becomes better, we are going to see more newer formats of images.
Ah.
Does Gemini or any other tool make existing images into new image formats, or do engineers need to change this every time a new image format comes in?
Uh, I will probably answer this question on the two level.
Mm-hmm.
One is Gemini is a monitoring tool, monitoring and improvement tool. Improvement are captured in a way of insights about what you could do to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, second level is there are of course tools available in the world freeware. When, like for example, Google released AVIF, they also released tools to convert these images into AVIF format,
Mm-hmm.
right? The even the WebP format which was earlier and all, and you could automate all of this process in the pipeline. But
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say is again consider the 80/20 rule. is my image getting used in any of the core web vitals or user experience? Probably the image contribution is just maybe 10% for LCP, or sometimes my text is coming as an LCP, which means the image are not contributing into major user experience. So does it make sense to spend so much time, money, efforts to convert these images into new format just because somebody has released them and then wait for the optimization? No, you will not have drastic optimization, but
Okay.
you would have wasted long time, right? So that is what our experience suggests. Don't go for it unless your browser doesn't support the previous formats.
Okay. But Swapnil, in this case, let's say if somebody has that real challenge of the images which are maybe it's a website all about photography or something,
Huh.
right? And they have that real challenge. They've put all those images. Let's say they had put it in the JPEG format or something like that earlier, and now with new technologies, they want to change it. But yes, there are thousands of images. Changing it is not an easy thing. Uh, uh, if the problem is real, is there some tool to solve that, or is the manual the only way that he convert all those images into the newer formats and then upload it?
So there are tools available, which you can which convert, and then you have to write on top of this a script which will take input like all the images and make an output of the images. But in this case, you also need to consider one more option.
Mm-hmm.
Not all browsers supports all these new formats. For example, AVF is not supported by all the browsers. So you have
Correct.
to actually have both the copies of images and
Mhm.
have a code in the HTML that okay, this type of browser serve AVIF, this type of browser serve JPEG.
Have you
So,
suggested for the mobile and the desktop?
no,
Similarly,
it's not Moha like mobile desktop.
different
Uh,
image.
Same way, based on browser and all. So the thing is not very straightforward as we've seen. Like,
Mhm. Right. Understood. And thanks for sharing that again. Uh, Next question is from Jaya, and Jaya is asking, does caching help us making a page speed scores better?
okay, good question, I would say. Uh, okay, now what we have learned, right? I mean, your performance is all about retaining the users, right? The first new user, the first bottleneck which they're going to face when they land first time on the page is the slowest basically experience. Now, when they're landing slowest, basically they are most probably going to see uncached version. Caching will come only in place when there is a I mean, the repeat user who is coming into picture. Okay. Now, having understood this, the second concept which we discussed about is let the HTML paint maximum and let the HTML mark your FCP, LCP, and I mean do everything with HTML only. Don't wait for JS, CSS, or images or something. That kind of basically strategy. Now, if you follow this to the heart, then caching is not going to help. So where caching helps? Caching helps for a repeat user, but then there are various types of caching, like service worker caching, CDN caching, browser caching, and all. And two, on the bandwidth side, you are basically saving money spent on the infrastructure. If your content is cached somewhere in the browser, then for repeat user, it is getting used from the cache. So you are saving revenue on the bandwidth used on the CDN infrastructure. So from that point, it will help. But from site speed point of view, as again I said, page speed just tells you that okay, ensure caching, far future caching and all. But you won't see a much gain in the user experience or page speed numbers.
Thanks. We have a question from Ashwarya. Ashwarya is asking, should I develop my website on CSR or SSR, considering if I want to solve all the page speed challenges, which is better?
Okay, I would say a very good question again. I like this kind of intelligent questions and all. Client side rendering versus server side rendering. Earlier, all technologies were client side rendering and all. I mean, the latest technologies. Google used to put React and Angular JS and all client side rendering. And then now the server side rendering technologies are also coming into picture, Next.js and all those kind of stuff. Uh, Server side technologies, in my opinion, has a distinct advantages of having better core web vitals right from the HTML side. So there are certain things like the because the page is rendered at the HTML, I mean server side itself, and then the HTML is served. Hence, it is already, I mean, you can resolve the dependency and all by doing an intelligent programming, by fixing performance issues at the server side itself, and have a very good core web vitals at the browser side. As against client side render, where only the HTML will come, then the JavaScript is going to execute, then some API calls will be made, then the content will be pushed, right? So it is a delayed sequence. So
Mhm.
definitely server side is better for core web. But disadvantage, server side rendering takes some resources on the server side, and hence you need more than your client side servers to serve the experience. So maybe instead of one server, maybe you will need two servers or something.
Okay, fine.
So that basically extra spend may come into the picture on the infrastructure side.
Okay. Um, Swapnil, in the session, you also mentioned about the loader and that the hey loader is not going to help you actually in any manner. But when you are also speaking about the leaky bucket, bounce rate is a challenge. Do you think that the loader at least will help you reduce some bounce rate? Is that something which would happen?
Loader will definitely help. I mean, what is loader symbolizing is basically improved FCP.
Hmm.
I'm suggesting that instead of the loader, you improve your FCP, first contentful paint, by painting the HTML. So maybe I'll paint the header, maybe like the Pureit guys had done. So that is another kind of loader, right? I mean, why should have only the loader kind of a standard loader? I would paint the HTML header, right?
Okay.
So it is still better, right? I mean,
Okay. We have one other question from Venkat. They are interested in your product and what is the URL of Gemini? How do they get access to Gemini? You
Gemini,
mentioned it's free or something. At least I believe that at least we would also love to share it in the notes. So please share that.
uh, Gemini is a real user. I mean, it's basically JavaScript which you have to integrate into your website, and on the back end, then we enable the serving and all, and then the dashboard is enabled. It is accessible at gemini.epsilon-delta.co, but because it is a real user site, real user monitoring tool, it is a restricted site, so it is not synthetic. Like it's not like GT Matrix where you just run the URL and get the data. You have to integrate, although we offer free trial. So if anybody is interested, they can just drop us a message on our website epsilon-delta.co or my LinkedIn profile or anybody, and then we'll get back.
Okay. We'll add that particular URL even for our future users on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Swapnil, for sharing that.
Yeah.
And one question coming from Bhavin. Bhavin is asking if I have the time to fix only one core web vital. Uh, this is like asking, do I solve my diabetes problem or should I solve my cholesterol problem? But yes, he wants to solve one only. Which one would you recommend to be fixed? Not diabetes or cholesterol, but yes, the core web vitals. Oh, yes, okay.
Okay. Uh, I have faced this question many times.
Oh, wonderful.
Uh, Two metrics which are related. One is FCP and LCP. If you fix LCP, you are actually fixing FCP as well.
Mhm.
Hence, I would suggest LCP.
Uh,
But then this is only going to be beneficial to your users from that point of view. It is not useful for Google. Google requires all three metrics to be fixed, right? But let's say I have a high bounce and all, then first thing I will fix is an LCP because it is also fixing the FCP.
Perfect. This is good. Thanks a lot, Swapnil. Uh, uh, I'm sorry for extending this additional 10 minutes, but yes, at least it was a really interesting session for the users. So at least I thought, okay, let's stretch for a few more minutes and complete at least the popular questions. But it was really a pleasure having you. Uh, Quite a good insights. If there is any parting message which you would like to share with the audience, please feel free to do that.
Yeah, I mean, only one message for you. I mean, always think of your users, right? End users whom you are serving, and hence improve your page speed, website speed for them, right? And if they are delightful, then your site will get more traffic and all. So always like customer comes first. So that is my parting message, even for site speed.
A really wonderful message. Thank you, Swapnil. It was a pleasure having you here, and
You too.
we really had an insightful session.
So I actually liked being on this webinar, and I hope this is very useful. People have found it very useful. If you have any doubt, do contact me. I would like to thank Infidigit, Kaushal, and all of you for providing me platform. Uh, I hope a lot of people basically jump into the site speed area and the whole world becomes faster. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Swapnil.